Hi, Joanna here. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Today we're going to be looking at an interview with my uncle. My uncle is a really big fan of biking, and so he's done a lot of really neat biking trips, and so we're going to be talking about a few of those today. So yeah, I hope that you enjoy the video. So, thank you so much for joining me today and letting me interview you. I really appreciate it. So yeah.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. I'm sure we're going to have a good time with this.
Yes. Okay. So, could you tell me a little bit about the trail that you were on and like the experience of it overall? Just like a brief overview of it.
Well, I've been on a lot of trails. I think done the Montour, a lot of riding up and down the Montour Trail. I've done some good bit on the Gap Trail. That's the one that goes from Pittsburgh to Washington, D.C. But I think the one that you're most interested in would be the Civil War ride I did back in, I think, about 2015. And that was a wonderful trip. That really was. I went in conjunction with Wilderness Voyagers. It's an outfitter in Ohio Bow. I went with my uncle, my cousin, and his son. It was a 3-day trip. We visited Gettysburg, Antietam, and Harper's Ferry. It was a combination of road biking and some trail biking along the Potomac River. We stayed in some of the quaintest little bed and breakfasts. It was just a wonderful day. It really was. It was a wonderful 3 days. And I would do it again in a New York minute.
Okay. So, what was probably your favorite thing about like the trip and everything? Like, what was what was your favorite part about this trip?
You mean other than the food? I'm teasing. Yeah. I think really it was the camaraderie, right? I mean, yeah, it's true that I learned an awful lot. At each stop, except for Harper's Ferry, we had private tour guides.
Oh, wow.
So what they did was they took us from, let's take Gettysburg. They took us from section to section, all right? And they actually explained what happened during that July encounter between, in 1863, I think.
Oh.
So, and that was considered to be the turning point of the Civil War, by the way. So it was neat. It really was. The tour guides, they brought so much to it, to the actual adventure itself. I mean, you knew where the Irish Brigade was going. I mean, unless you're going to actually spend a lot of time just studying it, and even if you did, there's nothing quite like being there. And the fact that you're on a bike, I mean, you take and go from place to place a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And it adds a little bit of a different dimension to either getting on and off a bus or walking.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So then, all right, we've learned about the best things. So what was like maybe something that you didn't quite enjoy about this trip?
My bum hurt.
Okay, that's fair.
It was. I mean, I went out and I was wearing those funny looking pants that bicycle people usually wear, right? Real tight with the padding. Mm-hmm. And there's a salve that, well, I can't remember what it's called, so we'll just call it butt butter. and it, and I still have a sore butt.
Oh no, I'm sorry that happened.
Oh, I did.
I mean, yeah, but like, I'm so sorry.
I mean, it was a pain in the, well, never mind.
Oh dear. Okay. So, what are some takeaways that you take from this experience that you would take maybe into other like biking trips that you've taken?
Since Brian's moved up to Pittsburgh, New York, Pittsburgh is right on the Erie Canal. So I'd like to make it up there for Erie Canal days.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's really a big deal up there. And that's a must-do bicycle ride.
Could you tell me a
Um,
little bit more about the Erie Canal ride then?
well, I've not done it, but anyway, what happened was when you take a look at the early days of America, right? Different cities were vying to be the gateway to the West.
Mm.
Okay, Baltimore had the National Road. Okay, New York had the Erie Canal. We had a Pennsylvania Canal, which was a complete and utter failure because of the topography, and because of the consistency of the soil and such. They couldn't keep water in it. They had lots of problems. And anyway, make a long story short, it would take settlers from, in our case here in Pennsylvania, from Baltimore, or I'm sorry, Philadelphia, and they would transport them to Pittsburgh. And then in Pittsburgh, they would pick up the canal boats or whatever, and they would go south or southwest, whatever. And so that was one thing. But in New York, they had the Erie Canal, and so they would do the Erie Canal, and it would end up taking you to the Great Lakes, and you could go west that way. So it was a big deal up until the point where they actually started building railroads, and then the railroad pretty much supplanted the canals.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing about it is the tow pass. You'd get on a canal boat, and there'd be a mule that would just carry you, or it would just pull you along the canal path, and it was very flat. So it makes for nice, easy bicycle riding. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with like the Gap Trail.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's just, well, the Gap Trail is actually railroad, but the Maryland side of it is a tow path.
Okay.
So for canal boats.
So then a towpath is then the trail that like they used to ride through, so it's a lot flatter, or?
Yeah, because what they would do is the boat would be on the water, right? And so they would have mules or horses that would actually pull these canal boats. Okay.
Yeah.
And they had a series of locks to keep the water at certain levels and such. And that's how a lot of people transported themselves from the port cities to the countryside, where land was cheap and abundant. So.
Hi again, I hope that you enjoyed the video. So, if the ending felt a little bit sudden, like, oh no, what happens next? Well, another video is coming out soon on some tips to take your kids on biking trips as well. So yeah, stay tuned. And again, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.